What if I told you that Oscar Piastri's fastest lap at Suzuka wasn't really about talent, but rather because of something McLaren has been hiding that could completely change the outcome of the Japanese GP? Because yes, the time of 1 minute and 30.133 seconds is already impressive on its own, but what is truly shocking is not the time, it is what the data behind that lap reveals, something that no other team has managed to control so far on this circuit. And when you understand what's going on with the McLaren's energy management, you realize that this isn't a simple improvement, it's an advantage that could break your entire weekend. Stay, because what that data hides changes everything we believed about Suzuka and who really is the favorite. A contradiction that no one in the paddock can explain. Because if one looks only at the results, what happened with Oscar Piastri in FP2 and Suzuka seems like an isolated case, almost a mirage within a completely chaotic start to the season for McLaren, a team that had been suffering serious reliability problems, consecutive abandonments, and most worrying, a total lack of rhythm against Mercedes in Australia and China, which had installed a very clear narrative. McLaren was no longer a reference, McLaren was lost, but in a matter of minutes all that begins to fall apart. Because what happens in Suzuka does not fit with anything we had seen before, it does not follow the logic of the championship, it does not respect the hierarchy that seemed to have been established, and that is where the real mystery begins, because Piastri not only sets the best time, he does so in a context where he had not even completed a single race lap in the entire 2026 season, something completely atypical for a driver who suddenly appears dominating one of the most technical circuits in the world, which automatically sets off all the alarms within the technical analysis. But if we delve deeper, the scenario becomes even stranger, because during FP1 the script was totally different. Mercedes clearly dominated, Russell and Antonelli set the pace, and everything pointed to a weekend relatively controlled by the Silver Arrows, which made us think that FP2 would simply be a continuation of that trend. And yet, the moment the conditions change, when the teams start looking for pure performance with soft tires, McLaren appears out of nowhere, breaks the time structure, and places Piastri at the top, with Norris also involved in the fight, completely dismantling the previous logic of the weekend. And this is where the key point that defines this act comes in, because we are not simply talking about an overall performance improvement. It is not that McLaren has taken a small step forward. What we see is a change in the behavior of the car at a very specific moment, in the most important type of lap of the weekend, the qualifying simulation, and that is what makes this lap so dangerous for the rest of the teams, because it indicates that there is something in that car that works differently when everything is pushed to the limit. Suzuka is not just any circuit, it is one of the most demanding tracks in terms of aerodynamic balance and energy management, a place where errors are amplified and where technical weaknesses are completely exposed. And precisely for this reason what Piastri did has so much weight, because not only was it fast, it was consistent in sectors where other cars begin to lose performance, especially in high-speed areas where power delivery and stability make the difference. The disturbing thing is not that McLaren has been fast. The disturbing thing is that it has been fast in the exact conditions where everyone else is suffering, and that leads us directly to the big question that begins to take shape at this point in the analysis. What has really changed in that car so that, on the worst possible circuit to hide weaknesses, it suddenly looks like one of the most complete on the grid? Because we stop looking at the result and begin to understand the why, and this is where Oscar Piastri's return stops being impressive and becomes something directly disturbing for the rest of the grid. When analysts begin to review the telemetry and onboard images, the first indication appears that this is not a normal lap, because there is a completely different behavior in one of the most critical elements of the car in 2026. The hybrid system, and more specifically, how it is managing energy on a circuit where practically everyone is having problems. To understand this, we must go to a key concept that is marking the performance at Suzuka. Superclipping, a phenomenon where the electric motor stops delivering power in the middle of the straight because the system needs to recharge the battery, which causes a direct loss of top speed just when the driver is accelerating to the maximum. And this problem has become one of the biggest technical limits of the season on this circuit. And this is where McLaren completely breaks the mold. Because on Piastri's lap, what the data shows is that this effect appears much less than in the rest of the cars, especially in critical areas such as the back straight and 130R, which means that while other drivers are losing power at those points, the McLaren maintains a much more constant, cleaner, more efficient delivery, and that on a circuit like Suzuka is not a small advantage, it is a structural difference. This changes absolutely everything, because we are not talking about a visible aerodynamic improvement or a specific configuration. We are talking about something much deeper, about how the car manages its energy throughout the entire lap, and that has a direct impact not only on the top speed, but on the way in which the driver can attack each sector without compromising the next. In fact, if we connect this with what we already knew about McLaren, it starts to make even more sense, because this car was designed as an extremely aggressive evolution over its previous version, with changes in practically all key areas to open new windows of performance, suggesting that this type of improvement is no coincidence, but the result of a concept that is now beginning to show its true potential. And this is where the most dangerous element of this whole scenario comes in, because if McLaren has really found a way to reduce superclipping on a circuit like Suzuka, then they are not only solving a specific problem, they are attacking one of the fundamental limitations of this generation of cars. Which means this lap isn't just a fast lap, it's a sign. A sign that McLaren could have found something that the others don't have yet, and if that is confirmed in qualifying or in the long run, then what we saw in FP2 was not an isolated surprise, it was the first warning that the real order of the Japanese GP could be completely different from what everyone expected. And now the question is no longer whether Piastri can repeat that lap. The real question is how long it will take for the rest to understand what just happened. Where the theory becomes a real consequence because we are no longer talking about what Piastri did in an isolated lap, but about what this can cause in the entire development of the Japanese Grand Prix. And this is where the scenario becomes really uncomfortable for the rest of the teams. Because if what we saw in FP2 was not an anomaly, but a faithful representation of the McLaren's behavior in qualifying conditions, then we are looking at a car that is not only competitive, but has an advantage precisely at the point where Suzuka punishes everyone else the most, energy management at full load, and that has direct implications both on a lap and in race pace. In qualifying, the impact is immediate because reducing superclipping means being able to push for longer without losing power in key moments, which translates into a more stable, more aggressive and, above all, more predictable lap, something that on a circuit like Suzuka can mark decisive tenths between pole and the second row, and if McLaren can replicate this, then Piastri is not only in the fight, he could become the big favorite without anyone having anticipated it. But where this becomes even more dangerous is in the race. Because better energy management not only affects a fast lap, it affects the entire stint, it affects how the driver can defend, how he can attack, how he can exit long corners without compromising the next straight, and above all, how he can maintain performance without entering those phases of power drop that we have seen in other cars, which opens the door to something much bigger: consistency. And in Formula 1, consistency wins races. If McLaren has found a way to sustain that power delivery, then not only can they be fast, they can be consistent on a circuit where others are inevitably going to suffer ups and downs, and that's exactly the kind of advantage that defines a full weekend. Now, this is where the final twist to this analysis comes in, because there is also the possibility that all of this has a hidden cost. Because optimizing energy delivery in certain areas can imply sacrifices in others, whether in degradation, in temperature, or even in recovery phases, and that is something that we have not yet fully seen, because FP2 does not show the complete picture of a race. And therein lies the real tension of this Grand Prix. Because we've reached the point where everything boils down to one question. Is this advantage sustainable, or is it just an illusion perfectly executed in one lap? If sustainable, McLaren may have delivered the final blow to the table at Suzuka. But if it's not, then that same aggressiveness that gave them the fastest lap could become their biggest weakness when it really matters. And right there is where everything is going to be decided. And in the end, it all comes down to a single idea. This return of Oscar Piastri in Suzuka was not a coincidence, it was a statement. A statement that completely breaks the narrative with which we arrived at the Japanese GP, because we went from seeing McLaren as a lost team, full of doubts and problems, to discovering that, in silence, they could have been working on a solution that directly attacks one of the biggest technical limits of this season: energy management in circuits like Suzuka. What the data reveals is not simply that Piastri was the fastest. It's that he was faster in a different way, in the areas where others lose performance, in the moments where the car normally betrays you, and that is what makes this lap so dangerous for his rivals. Because if this is real, if this energy efficiency is maintained in qualifying and in the race, then McLaren has not only returned, it has found an advantage that can redefine the competitive order on this circuit. But at the same time, the doubt is still there. Because we have not yet seen the full picture, we do not know if this performance can be sustained under pressure, with wear and tear, with traffic, with strategy, and it is precisely that uncertainty that makes this Japanese GP a turning point. Here not only a pole or a victory will be decided. Here we are going to discover if Piastri was a flash in the pan, or the beginning of something much bigger. And now that you know what that data really hides, the next time you see a fast lap, I assure you that you will not look at it the same way. If you want, I can expand the first block with more technical and comparative depth to further increase video retention. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.